Number one of Talk of the Town. I'm Larry Rifkin, and as promised, we are having a debate for the 73rd District, and it is the incumbent, Jeff Berger, and Steve Giacomi, the Republican challenger. And let me just go over the debate format very briefly. The opening remarks and introductions will be given by the candidates, approximately 90 seconds. Guys, if you can keep it to that. And then we'll have questions from me, and I will alternate each question. If either candidate wants to allow the debate to continue, they will give me that sign here that you will not see at home. It will be a visual gesture. I hope it will be one that, will be gentle. And the exchange will go on until I feel that we've kind of exhausted the topic, and then we will move on. And about halfway through, we'll see how much time we do have. We will invite you to call in. Please, if you are involved with one of the candidacies, it's easy to detect that. If you say, this guy's the greatest or the worst or whatever, that gives us a signal. So please, we want people independent of the campaigns to call in. So let me start with Steve Giacomi for the opening comment about himself and introducing himself. And then our first question will go to Jeff Berger. And Steve Giacomi, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Larry. Welcome, Jeff Berger, and welcome to the listeners. I appreciate the opportunity that you gave us to come in here today. I think this is a fantastic forum for Jeff and I to sit here and make our views known, and I'd love to do it 3 or 4 more times before November if we could. Maybe we can hit up the neighborhood groups and have a few more debates and forums, because I think this is really great. Just by the way of opening, I want to say that I welcome this opportunity to talk about these issues because I think there are a lot of issues. I think Representative Berger is a good man. I think he's a nice man with a good heart, a good father and husband, and I think he's a good person, but the problem is he and Governor Malloy and the people in Hartford have been letting us down. The problem in Hartford is representatives who come home to the district and say one thing and then go back up to Hartford and do another. What I think we need in Hartford is a change from the same old status quo that has put us hundreds of millions of dollars in the hole with high taxes and at the bottom of just about every list of rankings when it comes to personal income, business, financial stability, etc. I will be that representative. I will be that change. I will be somebody who will represent the middle class in Hartford. I will be Waterbury's representative to Hartford and not the other way around. I believe I have the skills, the education, the background, and the proven track record to be the person that can deliver for the 73rd and for really the state of Connecticut things that have not been delivered in the last several years. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Jeff Berger.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. And I don't consider this a debate. I consider it a discussion of the topics. And certainly there'll be philosophical differences between Steve and I that go across party lines and, personal lines. But the truth of the matter is, I've lived and worked and raised a family in the 73rd District for over 40 years with my wife, Noreen. I've experienced and appreciate the importance of strong family ties to the community in which we all live in the 73rd District. And Larry, and to the listeners, I've based my entire legislative career on sensitivity and commitment to the district and its quality of life. My whole adult life has been around public service. Retired from the city of Waterbury for 20 years, served on boards and commissions in the city, Board of Aldermen, and state representative for 16 years and 8 terms. Larry, the campaign comes down to choices, and my legislative career and commitment should never be in question. Served as House Chairman of the Commerce Committee, Deputy Speaker of the House, and currently House Chairman of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. These are tenures that are very, very important to the city of Waterbury and the 73rd District. There are tenures and chairmanships that deliver results. I want to continue in the delivering of those results. And for your listeners, really, elections are about choices. Voting is a right, and serving as your state representative is my privilege.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And let's get started with something that happened as late as yesterday, and that was the Sikorsky deal. And I know, Jeff Berger, you were very involved on the House floor with that yesterday. So tell us, is this a good deal for the state of Connecticut, or is it a representation that we've really got to struggle to keep industry here in the state? What does this represent, this Sikorsky deal?
Well, Larry, I'm going to tell you something. This is a tremendous deal for the state of Connecticut, and a deal that was pretty much unanimous across the board in a bipartisan way. And, certainly while we're talking about that, a lot of the legislation, and certainly in finance and in commerce, I've worked in a bipartisan way to develop. So when we look at the Sikorsky deal, I think two primary things are involved with that. And, I think Steve will agree with this. I'm sure that he may have supported it, maybe he wouldn't have. But the truth of the matter is it's about the state of Connecticut being competitive in aerospace and advanced manufacturing. The supply chain is tremendous. It's multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of jobs at stake, which are going to transcend down and feed into all of the communities of the state of Connecticut. For a $220 million investment, the multiplier effect is in the billions of dollars in capital expenditures, wages and benefits, and the growth of an aerospace industry in the state of Connecticut. Listen, there is no question that Sikorsky and Stratford was out of here. They were going to take 8,000 jobs and move them to South Carolina or Florida if they weren't able to get an agreement. Now, we can talk about the merits of that, plus or minus. The truth of the matter is that is the reality. So that is the economic reality of competing nationally for companies. We see that happening now. New York giving billions. South Carolina and Florida, which are right-to-work states, they're giving tax initiatives. So it's become the norm now, and we need to keep and be competitive.
Steve Giacomi, how would you have voted on this?
Well, I'll tell you what, I thought it was a good deal. It was a good deal for some of the reasons that Representative Berger mentioned, but we gloss over the facts. The fact of the matter is, what would have been a better deal? If the state of Connecticut was competitive enough and had a good enough business climate that we didn't have to bribe companies to stay. Sikorsky has been in Stratford since 1929, almost 100 years. What does it say about our state that we have a company, an institution that has been associated with Connecticut? When you say Sikorsky, you think of Connecticut, that they have been around for so long, but in order to get them to stay, we have to bribe them with a financial incentive package. And by their own admission, they said, well, doing business in Connecticut is a little high, and in order to compensate for those high business costs, Connecticut is going to have to give us this financial incentive package. They keep talking about, and I listened to the debate up in Hartford yesterday at the Capitol, and I heard Representative Berger and some of his friends, and they said, we keep talking about competition. Well, this is evidence that Connecticut won that competition. We won. Let's be positive. Larry, there shouldn't have been any competition. If Connecticut was a good business climate, if Connecticut was a place where it was economically feasible to open businesses and to be strong and to provide jobs and to grow income, then a company like Sikorsky would say, we've been in Connecticut for 100 years and we'll be happy to stay here for another 100 years. He just admitted it himself. Well, if we didn't give them this package, they would have left. What does that say about the state of Connecticut that a company like Sikorsky was ready to leave?
Jeff Berger?
Well, again, we've heard this on the floor yesterday. This is not corporate welfare. This is us being competitive. This is the economic reality of large corporations now throughout the state of Connecticut. And it's not us having to bribe anybody. It's us putting together a financial package that is feasible, that has penalties associated with it, that has separate audits paid by the company to oversee the agreement that's before us. Senator France, a Republican from Greenwich, who's I respect greatly, is a ranking member in the Senate on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. He admitted on the floor and spoke very eloquently about the fact that this package is a package that is good, a package that is not corporate welfare, and that is very well structured. So It's a bipartisan issue. Many Republicans supported it. But we will hear the rhetoric about the fact that we are providing corporate welfare. But people need to understand that this is the competitive nature of keeping companies in our state.
Well, Larry, I mean, we just heard it. I was looking at the clock wondering how long it would take Representative Berger to call any sort of disagreement with him rhetoric. It's not rhetoric. It's facts. The fact of the matter is small businesses in this state are dying. And $200 million to Sikorsky, if not corporate welfare, is at the very least a huge benefit to a company that is a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is a $49 billion company. And again, the representative keeps glossing over the fact that he says this is competition, this is being competitive in today's market. And we keep ignoring the fact that, yeah, based on the position we're in now, it was a good deal to make. But why are we in this position? Why do we have to make these deals? Because the state of Connecticut is not a good place to do business in for companies large and small, period. And because of that, we're forced to make these deals.
Well, I would say to Steve that he can say that, but he admitted that he would have supported the package and voted for it. So I think it's important to understand that if you're going to support a package and vote for it, that you need to support that package and not just say yes for the sake of political expediency. But let me just get back to a little bit about small business. Because when I was chairman of the Commerce Committee for 8 years, again, working in a bipartisan way with my colleagues, coming up with results, one of the most important pieces of legislation that I did and championed in commerce was a Small Business Express program, a program that was a hand to small business when credit was not available to them in the 2008 recession. It was a handout to help companies both locally here. And let's talk about locally. There were 343 jobs saved to date with the Small Business Express program and 700 jobs in the greater Waterbury area that were created because of Small Business Express loans. It was a help out hand to those companies to help grow our economy. Now, does it all work? Is it a perfect system? We can say that it isn't. But it's a part of creating legislation that helps our economy. Oh, and by the way, since 2008 and the 2011 jobs bill, we have gotten back 95% of the jobs lost in the Great Recession.
Well, I'm not sure where he's pulling that number from. Representative Berger wants to talk about jobs. Look at the New London Day. They ran an article September 19th about the latest jobs report. And two of the state's leading economists both said that it was a very poor report that reflected badly on Connecticut, that we are dead last in New England in job recovery since the Great Recession. And the number that they had in that article, taken from both of those economists, was that we've recovered only about 80% of the jobs that were lost during the Great Recession. They also said that most of those jobs that have been recovered since the Great Recession are not as high paying as the ones that were lost, so that drags down people's personal incomes. And that in the August jobs report that was talked about in this article, Connecticut lost 1,500 private sector jobs. One of those economists, one of the leading economists in Connecticut, was quoted as saying, generously, I guess we could say that Connecticut's jobs report that we're treading water, but really we're losing ground. These are the results that Representative Berger wants to point to?
Well, I'll just say that the figures are true. I mean, the current job figures, there's 109 jobs returned to the state of Connecticut. There's roughly 118,900 jobs. So we could talk about percentages. They change from month to month. But the truth of the reality is we're getting the jobs back. And when we talk about high-paying jobs, UTC, Sikorsky, these are jobs, $100,000 to $95,000 a year jobs, and advanced technology for our children coming out of high school and for our Advanced Technology Center at Naugatuck Valley Community College, which I championed. It's in my district. Those are real jobs, and those are jobs that people can get, students, high school, community college age, can get when they graduate. And that's real, and that's happening today.
All right, let me move on to another topic, but all of these are related. As co-chairman of the Revenue, Finance, and Bonding Committee, One could argue that Jeff Berger was really in the vanguard on the first meaningful legislation on property tax reform in decades. It results in the lowering of mill rates on cars in Waterbury from 58 to 37 and 32 next year. Steve Giacomi, if you could comment on the impact of this to Waterbury as an alderman and what additional ideas each of you might have to lower property taxes further.
Well, I think that lower property tax is a good thing. Obviously, you look at Waterbury, it's the second highest mill rate in the state. I know that. I'm on the Board of Aldermen. I have a proven record over the last several years of arguing for lower property taxes. It's the single most important thing that I've heard from people as I've gone out now, 2,500 and counting doors that I've knocked on since I started this campaign. But, I get a lot of people. People are smarter than I think a lot of others realize, and Representative Berger gives them credit for. Most people have told me a couple things. What they said is, I hear about this car tax, but first I was told it was going to go down to one number, then it got raised to another number, but then the property taxes on my house went up, and I know when I go shopping things are more expensive. What's going on? And I explain it to people. I go, well, what happened was the people up in Hartford, these leaders, quote unquote, these proven effective leaders, they raised taxes in order to lower taxes. You don't raise a tax to cut a tax, Larry. If you're getting results, you're able to cut taxes across the board. I support property tax reform. I support lower taxes. I support lower taxes across the board. You don't raise the sales tax, then take away exemptions such as clothing and footwear. So it's more expensive for you to go and buy an outfit for your kid or back to school clothing for your granddaughter. Every time you go shopping, it's more expensive, and then you take that extra money up in Hartford and you give it back like you're being generous and say, well, your car taxes are lower, but every single other tax, income tax, hospital tax, hotel tax, they were proposing taxes on dog grooming, on car washes. They want to tax the air we breathe pretty soon, and then they say, well, we're going to take some extra money and we're going to lower your car taxes. Aren't we great? It's a shell game. It's not a real reform.
Jeff Berger.
Okay, so first of all, I need to correct Steve on something about I don't take anybody in my district for granted, nor do I challenge their ability to be able to realize a subject. I respect everybody in my district, so I want to make that clear that Steve made a comment that I don't, and that is just erroneous and false. I respect everybody, and everybody knows me. I give everybody a fair shake. But, listen, let's talk. He said, well, you raised the sales tax. We didn't raise the sales tax. The sales tax is 6.35%. We did not raise the sales tax. Certainly, we'd like to lower the sales tax. But part of the property tax reform piece is the diversion of 0.5 to property tax reform, MRSA, and 0.5 to transportation. Now, two areas, Larry, that we need to make strides in. The property tax reform piece and regionalization through our COGS and sharing of both tax revenue and the ability to be able to share services, and it's an important component for us to be able to allow municipalities to lower their mill rate at the local level. Now, there is always a constant struggle between the budget process of a municipality and the state of Connecticut. But we have, for the first time, delivered real property tax reform. And everybody could see it by the way of their property tax on car. 37 mills this year, 32 mills next year. Those are real. Now, the people can talk about the fact, well, you promised this. But the reality is they got a break for the first time on property taxes in a long time. Steve sits on the Board of Aldermen. The mill rate went up in the city. That's not Jeff Berger's fault. That's not the General Assembly's fault. They need to get their services better in line in the city. Don't blame the state of Connecticut, because the state of Connecticut provided $147 million to the city of Waterbury, not with which, if they did not get that, the mill rate in Waterbury would be 102 mills.
It's true. I'm on the Board of Aldermen. I've been on the Board of Aldermen for 6 years now, and every single year I've opposed budgets that called for tax increases here in the city. That's a fact. It's on the record. I'm probably the most vocal opponent of tax increases in this city for the last 6 years. So if Representative Berger is saying the city needs to get its act together and get its services lower and more efficient, he must be talking to Mayor O'Leary and the Democrats who are in charge of the city, because I never supported any of those tax increases. I will tell you, he likes to bring up money that comes to Waterbury, and he just said it himself. People can talk about the fact that you were promised one thing, but the reality is you're getting a break, and next year it's going to go down to 32. I guess my interpretation is that's a promise, that's a guarantee that it's going to go down to 32, but again, he even admitted himself. They had made us a promise in February that it was going to be one thing, and then turned around a couple months later and it was another. I could tell you right now, working on the city budget, just as he referenced, in February of 2016, the budget proposal was to give Waterbury about a little bit north of $175 million. But thanks to the mismanagement at the state level and the terrible results we've gotten, the disaster that the state economy and the state budget is, as we moved along in the budget process, that number from Hartford kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, until finally Waterbury got a lot less than what we were first promised. We got $650,000 hit to our education cost sharing. School transportation wiped out. All kinds of things that matter to everyday people here in Waterbury got cut. And you know what? I agree with them 100%. I think Waterbury needs to be better. I've been fighting to make it better. And so his friends and his supporters who actually run things around here, if they want to come over to my side and agree with me, that would be great.
Bipartisanship, I think, is very, very important, both at the state and at the local level. But I guess Steve doesn't like the fact that $147 million was brought back to the city. People opened up their pocketbooks and got back, some people, over $1,000 on savings in their car tax. But, you know, opposing budgets is one thing. Coming up with plans that are going to be reality is another. So you could talk the talk. Sometimes you need to walk the walk and deliver in capital letters. Listen, when Steve opposed the local budget, and I know we're not talking about the budget in the city of Waterbury, we're going to try to talk about the state budget. But look, when Steve opposes the city budget, he opposes nurses in our schools for our children. He opposes special education for our children. And he opposes the expansion and renovation of our schools here. So when he votes no on those things.
I'm not sure what Board of Aldermen or debates or proposals Representative Berger has been looking at. I've never tried to cut nurses or school building projects, etc. I've argued time and time again, we give out raises to managers here in the city making six figures. I've argued that that's one area we should cut. I've argued that we should consolidate offices. I've argued for a lot of common sense things that I think everyday people would want. He wants to talk about education. I'm a teacher. Some of my best friends are teachers. My mother is a teacher. For him to sit here and say that I oppose special education, let's talk about special education. Let's talk about education in general. I've been knocking on doors again for about 2.5, 3 months now. I've hit more than 2,500 doors. One of the doors I hit was a lady from, well, she's right in the edge of the district, kind of, the town plot almost section of Waterbury. And she said to me two things. Steve, thank you so much for coming to my door. No one ever really bothers to come around. I said, do you know who your state representative is? She goes, no, I've never met him, have no idea. And then she started telling me a story about her daughter. Her daughter's autistic. She attends Waterbury schools. She doesn't feel like her daughter's getting the care and the attention that she needs. And when she asked central office, why is this happening? They said, times are tough. Things are tight. We're doing the best we can. If we could get more funding or perhaps, different resources, then I think maybe we'd be able to do that. But we all know, the facts are facts. The education funding in the state of Connecticut's a mess. We saw that court case from a couple weeks ago. We know that Waterbury gets shortchanged. Representative Berger keeps talking about delivering for his district. Number one, state dollars, state money, it's not free money. It's tax money. That's number one. Number two, delivering for our district. What's more important than education? Education in Waterbury has been getting shortchanged by the state for years. If he's such a proven effective leader, why are we getting shortchanged?
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's have one more comment on this from Jeff Berger, and then we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back. Okay, Jeff.
Okay, the truth of the matter is, for the listeners, that he can say he's supporting special ed. He said he can support here. He voted against the budget that supported those things. So a no vote is no for those things. But look it. Delivering to the district is what I have done for 16 years. Everybody knows that. As a Republican in a Democrat-controlled legislature, Steve's not going to be able to deliver that. As chairman of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, I'll be able to deliver that. And I have and will continue to. You had to go to a commercial?
I do have to go to a break. We'll be back in just a moment here on WATR, the 73rd District, being represented today in terms of the election cycle. Jeff Berger, the incumbent, 8 terms, and Steve Giacomi, who is the minority leader on the Board of Aldermen, challenging him on the Republican side. Back in a moment here on Talk of the Town.
Hi, I'm Bob Alvine, president of Premier Subaru. We know the average shopper spends 17 hours researching your next new car. You'll search make, price, selection, and service. At Premier, we have 2 dealerships with lots full of brand new Subarus, all with low lease and purchase options, low finance rates, 2 years of free maintenance, and our exclusive lifetime powertrain warranty. We're ready to save you time and money. Premier Subaru, Straits Turnpike, Watertown. Online at buyatpremier.com.
Seniors, are you struggling with the complicated decision of which Medicare D plan will best fit your needs? They run the gamut from plans with high deductibles and copays but low premiums, to plans with low deductibles and copays but high premiums, to plans that are somewhere in between. Some plans will cover all your meds, but some will not. And they expect you to sort through all this. Let the experts at Beacon Falls Pharmacy help you. They'll analyze your personal med list and create a side-by-side comparison of all the Med D plans for which you are eligible. You'll come away with a thorough understanding of your total costs, including premiums, deductibles, and copays. You'll know if and when you fall into the donut hole and when you'll come out. You'll even know what your costs will be on a month-to-month basis throughout 2017. Best of all, the service is absolutely free, and Beacon Falls Pharmacy will not try to steer you toward any particular plan. That decision is yours and yours alone. Call 203-729-4567 to make an appointment for a free personal consultation on your Medicare D needs. Beacon Falls Pharmacy is a Health Mart pharmacy, caring for you and about you.
Torrington's historic Warner Theater invites you to the 5th Annual International Playwrights Festival, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, October 13th, 14th, and 15th. A celebration of new works by playwrights from across the country and around the globe. This year's 13 winners and 2 invited playwrights explore the human experience and spirit. Tickets are just $15 per evening. That's 15 performances of new works by playwrights from around the world, performed in the Nancy Marine Studio Theater at the Warner Theater. Facing Backwards, a production featured in last year's festival, will go on to represent Connecticut in the New England Regional Festival in 2017. Learn about this year's winners and see the schedule of performances at warnertheater.org. That's warnertheater.org. Or call the box office today at 860-489-7180.
1320 WATR in Waterbury. We're in the midst of a debate for the 73rd District, and I will invite some callers to join us, but I have one question. I'm going to start. Oh, wait a minute. Steve Giacomi wanted to continue on the last question.
It was something that Representative said before we went to the break, and it's something I spoke about. I've spoken many times about. He said, as a Republican in a Democratic-controlled legislature, he won't be able to get anything done. Well, first of all, 5 minutes ago he talked about bipartisanship, but apparently bipartisanship ends at some point, and Republicans won't be able to get anything done. First of all, that's false. We know that's one of the biggest mistruths and misnomers about the legislature. You look at Salim Nugent, you look at Rob Kane, you look at Republican legislators all over the state. They don't have to be go along to get along. Yes, sir, Governor Malloy, whatever you need, Governor Malloy, in order to bring funds back to their district. You see it all the time. Good projects, good ideas get attention, and they get funding. And if legislators are doing their jobs and being vocal and loud and energetic, regardless of party, they're going to be able to get things done. That's number one. Number two, the Democrats, including Mr. Berger up at the state capitol, he names all of his titles. I mean, first of all, everyone in the legislature has a title. They're assistant, deputy, majority, minority, whip, chairman, co-chairman. There's so many titles up there. There's so many chiefs. But they've mismanaged the state so much. He talks about no votes. Let's think about some of the yes votes over the last few years. The 2 largest tax increases in state history. All right? Small business mandates that make it more expensive to do business in this state. $billion budget deficits. I think it's okay that some people up there voted no, but because of those results, who knows how much longer the legislature will be controlled by the Democrats? It could end this cycle. Who knows?
Jeff Berger.
Republicans often talk about the past budgets, but let's talk about the budget that was just passed. $1 billion taking off the bonding agenda on authorizations to lower our debt service. Almost $1 billion cut in government to lower the size of government. And that includes layoffs through attrition and through layoffs across the board. Now, we need to focus a little bit stronger on what the legislature has done and will continue to do in the last budget cycle and moving forward to new budget cycles. And it is true. I have worked in a bipartisan way. Look at the Manufacturers Caucus, the apprenticeship tax credit, worked very closely with Republicans and Representative Nugent on that. Supported the apprenticeship tax credit for manufacturing and advanced manufacturing in the veto session. The House voted almost unanimously for that credit. The Senate rejected it, and we weren't able to override the veto. But those are the kind of things that you do when you build relationships in Hartford, like I have done over the course of the years, to build relationships both with Republicans and Democrats to be able to deliver results.
Okay, one more retort, and then we'll take a phone call, and then we'll get on with
other
questions.
Again, in the same breath, he says, let's not focus on the past, let's focus on the future, and then says, well, let's think about what the legislature has done. Larry, facts are facts. All I hear from Representative Berger, Governor Malloy's office, the people in Hartford, all these insiders, is that we're being too negative. We're not being negative. It's just facts. I think it was Harry Truman when they said, give him hell, Harry. He goes, I just tell it like it is. They think it's hell. We've had 2 massive tax increases. The last 2 or 3 budgets have been hundreds of millions of dollars in deficit. The projection for the next one, I believe, is $1.3 billion with a B. So he talks about his relationships and his leadership. What has that wrought? What has that gotten us? It's gotten us massively in the hole with the 2 biggest tax increases in the history of the state of Connecticut. So if those are the results that he wants to point to, I'll let him point to those results all day.
All right, quickly.
Just a quick retort on that. Look at. Steve's talking about stuff at 35,000 feet. People in the district know that I've been there for them and I've delivered. They can just look around the district and see that. That's the most important thing.
Okay, Jeff Berger, this question will go first to you. We've only had 2 questions thus far. Lots of answers, but only 2 questions. Nick is on the line. Hi, Nick.
Just very quickly, gentlemen, good morning. The 493 bill in Hartford, I'm on record for. What do you 2 gentlemen, first of all, to the best of the both of you, well, what do you 2 gentlemen know about the 493 bill, which we are the highest electrical rates in the country? This is part of negotiations with Sikorsky. Are you doing anything or looking anything into that 493 bill that's costing every taxpayer in the state of Connecticut here? That bill should not be balancing the budget to Sikorsky.
Now, wait, be specific, though. Are we talking about the deregulation bill going back?
Yes, that deregulation bill is still on record right now, that we are paying as highest in the country, the highest utility bills, putting that money into the budget in Hartford.
Okay, energy deregulation. Thank you, Nick, in the state. Jeff Berger.
Yeah, look, in talking with business and seeing their concerns in the Manufacturers Caucus, certainly electrical costs play tremendously to the cost of business, especially for our manufacturers and advanced manufacturers. And, Nick is correct, and, he's lived this his whole life and knows it as well as anyone, that when we get into the grid in New England, the electrical costs are very, very expensive, and a lot more expensive than they are, say, in the south below the Mason-Dixon line. And it's part of what we need to do to be more competitive, is to lower our electrical costs. And we've addressed that in past legislation. We continue to struggle with that to be able to reduce our dependency. Some of that could potentially evolve around different sources of electricity and different alliances with other nations, specifically Canada with us. So there's a lot to do there. There's more we need to do. And for us to continue to be competitive, it's an area we need to address.
Yeah, and certainly I think that being competitive in energy pricing is paramount. It adds to all the other costs here in the state of Connecticut. When I talk to people daily knocking on their doors, middle-class people, and that's one of the things they always talk about. They talk about the high taxes, and it's just so expensive to live here, energy costs. It also reminds me of one of the things that when you talk about how to reform things in Hartford, and Hartford has to set an example, you talk about government waste and how to achieve efficiencies. And people always ask me on the stump, Steve, we know things are bad. We know the economy's terrible. The state budget's a disaster. What are some ways you would look to save? One of the things they do, I believe the state of Connecticut, is for their own energy, they accept a standard rate and they just sort of pay it, rather than go out to a third-party supplier, go out to bid, try and find somebody else to get their energy from. Any small business owner, any homeowner will tell you that if you go out and try to bid or find a third party, you could probably lower your costs. And I think the estimates are that the state wastes about $20 million a year in energy costs. If the state can't set the example, then I don't know what to tell you.
We have found, we're going to agree that we need to do something about energy costs. I don't know if third parties are the way to go, because I've had constituent calls in my office, and me being out on the stump and talking with people. Third party sometimes becomes a shell game, and they see their costs increase later on in a 2 or 3 year contract. So third party may not be the way to go, but listen, let's agree that we need to focus on it and get it done.
Okay, let me ask a question, then I'll get to our callers. And this is so important. Connecticut entered 2016 with more than $70 billion in long-term obligations, $26 billion for retiree benefits, $19.5 billion in health care for retirees, carrying more than $22 billion in bonded debt. As a legislator, how do you begin to tackle this problem and make certain that it's not going to crowd out current services? How do you begin to really tackle that? Steve Giacomi.
Well, I think you have to start to prioritize. I know that some of the Republicans at the Capitol and some of their proposals over the last several years have said we need to start prioritizing some of these things. $250,000 for a statue is not a priority. And that's just a small example, but it's sort of indicative of the attitude up at the Capitol. A lot of these Hartford people, these insiders who've been up there for 20, 30 years, they get comfortable and they start treating the bond commission, which is really the people's credit card. Because whenever something's bonded, that means that people in Hartford are borrowing money and putting it on taxpayers' credit card. They treat it like their own credit card. They go out, they buy a bunch of stuff, and then they come back to the district and they say, look at all the state money I brought back. Aren't I grand? That's really our money just coming back to us, being returned to us. And the more we bond, obviously, as you just said, the more that we lump onto the people to have to pay back in the future. One of the things that I think we need to talk about, and I know that Representative Berger talked about this recently, it was in a recent article in the Connecticut Post, was that we have to start having an actual standard for what an economic project versus a non-economic project is. And it boggles my mind that in the year 2016, with all the financial problems we have, we're billions of dollars in debt, the taxes are sky high, that people have been in Hartford as long as some of them have, Representative Berger almost 20 years, that now we're just figuring out, hey, you know what, guys, maybe we should have a little standard here and decide what's economic and what's non-economic. The fact of the matter is, if they haven't done it by now, there's no expectation that they'll do it in the future. I'd be committed to getting up there and doing something about that. I think it's something that should have been done a long time ago, and I'm not sure I trust the people that are there now to get it done.
Jeff Berger.
Yes, as the finance chairman in the House, I sit on the State Bonding Commission, and let's say our bonding ceiling, our soft cap at 88% is pretty standard throughout. And you know what? We're looking at non-economic development issues moving forward and trying to lower our bonding package. But those are projects that help everyone in our districts throughout the state of Connecticut. Now, if the city of Waterbury doesn't gain bonding dollars for school construction, for streets and roads, for athletic facilities, which I've been in the forefront of, you know what? Some other municipality is going to take that money from the city of Waterbury. So, you know what? I'm proud to stand there and fight and bring money back. Going forward, if we are going to look at ways, we probably need to create a definition of non-economic development projects, move forward, and have a direct conversation with our caucuses on what we will be able to do and what we will not be able to do. If you can't do something this year, then maybe you would need to wait to the next year. And let's focus on economic-driven jobs projects.
But in all, with the debt that we have already in the state of Connecticut, crowding out current services,
right.
How do we begin to address that?
Well, I think you're talking about the unfunded liability of our pension funds. When we look at the total unfunded liability of $25 billion plus dollars, it is a huge, huge drain on us and the ability to be able to deliver services. What we've done over the last few years is put in multiple millions of dollars, 18 million, 19 million, and 15 million more above what we need to do. But the number still gets, the spread is a little bit tough. So we need to get the spread brought into line to be able to not have to have that elephant in the room on our shoulders. There's no question we need to do more on our pension liability, and we are starting to do more. You'll see some more of that happen in this legislative session.
I just want to get back to one thing Representative Berger said, and he said, he was proud to bring state money back to the city. Again, state money is not free money. It's the people's money. So I guess on behalf of all the taxpayers in the city of Waterbury, you did raise our taxes a record twice, massive 2 record tax increases, but thank you for returning some of our own money to us. But it's, Larry, this old trope that people up in Hartford always tell you, these guys and girls have been up there 20 or 30 years, is, well, if we don't get it, somebody else is going to get it. Because, again, they treat it like a piggy bank. If there were standards, if there were priorities, if there were definitions of economic and non-economic, then if you had a good project in your district that was an economic project and some other district had a project that wasn't economic, then right there the decision's already made. So I don't think that you can just sit there and say, well, look, I'm bringing dollars back. He mentioned athletic facilities. I'm assuming he's talking about Municipal Stadium. I know he's had it on mailers. It's something he's talked a lot about. I think Municipal Stadium's beautiful. I played a lot of baseball there as a kid. One of my greatest memories was 13 years old, city championship, Blessed Sacrament, St. Pete's. The stadium was great. But it's more than just bringing the check, patting yourself on the back, and walking away. It was behind schedule. It was over budget. Representative Berger came to me asking me to get Republican support on the Board of Aldermen because we needed to kick in yet more money to get it done. City taxpayers on the hook because, well, here's the check, see you later. Leadership, see the project through.
Listen, as the representative, I could bring the money back. I can't have the hard hat on and manage the project. I can oversee, but I think that the Waterbury Development Corporation has done a tremendous job. I think Neil O'Leary's leadership has done a tremendous job. But look, it's not just Municipal Stadium. Let's talk about hundreds of $millions of dollars to modernize our schools. Caynard Tech, Carrington School, Bunker Hill Elementary, J.F. Kennedy High School, and the athletic facilities at JFK. I encourage everyone in the 73rd and 71st District to just go behind Kennedy High School and look at that magnificent facility. $10 million for improvements to Municipal Stadium, Fulton Park, Bunker Hill Park, and JFK Athletic Field. So those are real dollars.
Okay. And Steve, I want to hear from you on the pension obligations. What, as a legislator, what new ideas as a new legislator do you bring to that?
Well, that's a tough question, Larry. As you know, I've been a longtime member of the city's retirement board. We manage the city's pension fund. We were fortunate enough several years ago when the market conditions they couldn't have been more perfect, to be honest with you, that we borrowed money to shore up the fund, and now it's a matter of managing that fund correctly. To be honest, as someone with a background in finance and MBA and someone who's been on that board, there are no easy answers or quick fixes. You have to make the payments. You have to invest the money wisely. But you also have to start to look at the future. One thing that I know that's been asked up at the Capitol is reforms on pensions, perhaps moving future employees into defined contribution plans instead of defined benefit plans. That's something that I'd be willing to look at, I'd be willing to talk about and explore. Again, it gets talked about in Hartford, but nothing ever gets done.
Okay, Jeff, very quickly, then I want to take a question or two from our audience.
Jeff. And I certainly agree. Moving forward, everything's on the table.
Okay. Let me go to Mike. One quick question, Mike.
Sure. How you doing, gentlemen? Jeff, with the property, the car tax relief, I'm a homeowner over in the 73rd. Mm-hmm. My homeowner tax went up. Not only that, my property tax credit on the state tax went down. So at the end of the day, I'm at loss. I'm paying more. I mean, this doesn't help me. This doesn't help my people, my neighborhood and stuff. The only people I see always winning on these are those who, on the lower income or getting Section 8 or the HUD development, all that. We keep building more of that. You keep sending more money from the state for lower income housing. And those people just keep benefiting, while us trying to live a regular day, make a dollar, buy a home, buy a house.
I think he's got it. Okay. Mike, I think he's got it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike, for the call. And listen, and I understand, and in talking to people in the district, I understand the plight. There's people out there that have 2 jobs to help support, taxes, try to keep a house up, try to keep things moving forward for their family, try to create quality of life. Now, listen, I deliver the best I can. And the car tax reform was a 15-year fight, and we delivered that, and that's some relief. You can't deny the fact that that's property tax relief. For us to move forward to help lower the mill rate in the city of Waterbury, we really need to take the initiative to the next level for property tax reform, for the COGS and uniting services throughout the region, and possibly sharing a tax revenue through municipalities. This will help lower the tax rate. We're going to really try to ramp that up next session, and I look forward to being able to help you and to help you live in the district and enjoy its quality of life.
I think regionalization is something that's been talked about a lot. Certainly for me as a local elected official, I think it's something to explore. But again, we keep missing the bigger picture here. It's not about 35,000 feet. It's about reality. If Connecticut had a growing, thriving economy, if our state budget was stable and not the disaster that it is, if taxes were not massively increased over and over again, then I think we'd see an influx of people rather than people moving out. We've seen all the surveys and the statistics. We'd have job growth. We'd have high-income jobs. We'd have personal income growth. And you'd see property values rise, which would allow us to lower the tax rate. So I think, again, you have to look at the big picture. You can't cherry-pick 1 or 2 things and say, look, I made this better, when on the whole, things are much, much worse. We cannot just keep going down this path. We need a different path.
Okay, a question from Jeff, and we'll start with Steve Giacomi. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, I'm calling. My buzzword just came out, and that's regionalization. You talk about it often on the show, and I want to change it up. Let's try to both have positive answers. I think pointing out negatives is really easy these days. Anybody can sit at a bar with their friend and do that. What are your positive ideas for regionalization? How do you think it's working, and how does it benefit Waterbury? That's generally just my question.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's a lot of small things that have been discussed. Regionalizing public health services, health care and health services don't really change town to town. When you have someone with an illness in Waterbury, that illness isn't measurably different if they're living in Watertown. It's the same illness. I also think one thing I've talked about in the past as an alderman, and we should explore, is maybe a regional water authority. A lot of surrounding towns do use our water. They pay us for it. There's been some argument about how much they pay and whether it's enough. Waterbury has an amazing water system. We know that. I think we could be utilizing that more effectively. And perhaps something like a regional water authority would lower the cost of water and water services for everyone in Waterbury while still providing this amazing resource for everyone, not just in Waterbury, but throughout the region.
Jeff Berger.
Well, I disagree with Steve on the regionalization of water authority. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a loss of control of the city of Waterbury. We've had our water resources. The forefathers of the city of Waterbury saw it fit to shore up our water reserves and buy property outside of Waterbury. So I think we need to maintain control of that. I will agree, however, on sharing of tax revenues is very, very important in the regionalization piece. That is a key component for us to be able to lower our taxes. School bus contracts are part of that idea. 911 call centers have been talked about, maybe work, maybe don't. But this is what we need to do. This is a new reality of us to be able to attack and lower the mill rates in all the municipalities, of which the COGS have a say in.
Very quickly, the mayor's idea about sending kids out to the suburban areas to avoid more school construction costs where we're losing population in the suburbs. Jeff Berger.
Yes, I'm supportive of the concept. We have to look at the devil's in the details on that. It's something that we need to look at, and I like it's a refreshing idea.
Steve Giacomi.
Yeah, as an educator and as a teacher, I think it's something that's very interesting to talk about, but the reality is you've got to figure out who would be selected, why would they be selected, how long would they stay, are there measurables for you can stay as long as you reach a certain grade point average, etc. I think the mayor threw it out there because he wanted to start a discussion on radio stations and things like that, but I think it's an idea in its infancy.
Okay, and Matt, be on good behavior. Matt, hi.
I will be, and this is nothing personal. Nothing personal. I will say this to every listener right now. If you are listening to this debate and you are unhappy with the direction of Connecticut, the high taxes.
Okay, look, no, we're not doing editorials. Questions.
Okay, I'll ask the question then. Steve.
Okay, quickly.
Steve, yes. How do we bring good-paying jobs and big business into Waterbury?
Well, I think it's not just Waterbury, it's the state of Connecticut. There are so many regulations and barriers to entry. And, how many mandates can Hartford and Representative Berger and Governor Malloy and his friends in the legislature heap on the backs of small businesses that they don't want to open up either in Waterbury or in Connecticut? We've got to lower property taxes. We have to make it more inviting, and we have to eliminate a lot of these mandates. It's that simple.
Jeff Berger.
We have voted for and passed bills that decrease regulation for business and are studying regulatory procedure that we can make business more friendly for us by lowering the leapfrogs that businesses have to do. Listen, the supply chain, part of the bill we did yesterday, those are good-paying jobs that come to Waterbury.
Okay, Bob. No, Bob left us. Listen, we have less than a minute to go, and I want to thank you both. Really, it was a great exchange of ideas and actually had me listening intently, really. And that doesn't always happen. So I want to thank you both for coming by today.
You, Larry.
And if we have time, I mean, it might be because you're both very actively participating in this campaign cycle. It might be good to do it again one more time. So let's see what the schedule allows, both ours and yours. But I want to thank you very much for coming by today.
You're quite welcome.
Absolutely. It was
All right,
my pleasure.
Jeff Berger, the incumbent in the 73rd, and Steve Giacomi, the Republican, who is challenging him in the 73rd. Well, we are going to have open lines when